Shalom, everyone. I'm so happy that we have an opportunity to come together again to celebrate the fact that we have such wonderful members in our congregation of so many backgrounds and interests and so on, that we can have a weekly introduction to any and many of them. Today, we are delighted to welcome Larry and Evelyn Hecht from Winnipeg. Most of you know them. When they are in Naples, they are very active, as they've been in their community up there. And today we're going to try to unwrap a little bit the mystery of the Hecks and getting to know them a little bit better. How are you guys?
Good.
We're
Good?
fine.
You have to be a better interview subject. Don't give me one word answers, because I'm going to try to.
Larry is not a man of many words.
But he's a man of many deeds, and we're going to get to see and hear a little bit more about that. How's the whole coronavirus treated you? I know you left Naples a little bit earlier than anticipated this year.
You can answer.
We left because we heard that the Manitoba border might be closed.
Right.
So on March 20th, we packed up and we left. It was a very, very scary feeling because there were very few cars on the highway. And in the 3 hotels we stayed in, more or less, we were the only people in the hotel.
Wow.
Then when it got close to coming to the Canadian border, personally, I got very nervous. Maybe there's 400 cars in front of me and we're going to spend the whole day there. Well, when we got to the border, there was just 1 car in front and boom, we were home.
And it was wonderful to be home. Under those circumstances, it was very, very good to be back on Canadian soil.
Well, I'm sure it is. And you had to sequester for 2 weeks as well, right?
Yes.
Right.
Our house was supplied with groceries by our kids, and we took our time unpacking and settling in and catching up with people, and it was fine. But after the 2 weeks, we were ready to break out, but we really couldn't.
Yeah, one of the common denominators I've discovered is that in many cases the kids would prevent that. I don't know if you had a similar experience.
Are you kidding? My son had me, without my knowing, Rabbi, had me fix my phone so that he could see where I was walking when I went outside. And if I went more than a half a block down the block, he was on my case. This was when we were really trying to behave and to be isolated. So
Yeah, well,
anyway,
I know he meant well. I know he
things are
meant well.
much easier now. Things are much easier. We're very, very blessed to be in Manitoba.
Right.
The incidence is very low, and we're almost into phase 3 of opening up, and we don't feel foolhardy, but we feel comfortable going
Right.
out.
Well, I know the weather has cooperated, and now I can see from your background that you're in the cottage, as you Canadians mentioned, your summer cabin. How is that? I can see it from your face.
Fabulous.
You light up when I bring the subject up.
Well, we have 2 happy places in our lives. One is Naples, and one is the cottage. Whether Naples will continue to be our happy place is questionable now. However, the cottage has been part of our life for over 50 years, and we've done extensive renovations and made it extremely comfortable, and we're very happy to be here. Right now, the lake outside is raging with whitecaps. You'd think we were on the ocean, but the wind will die down and we will have calm days and we will be able to enjoy it.
As we are speaking today, we have a torrential downpour, which is very typical for this time of the year in the afternoons. In 15 minutes, it'll be gone and the sun will come out and life will move on, so thank God. But Manitoba, that's in the middle of Canada. I don't know how many people are familiar with the geography. How did Jews end up in Manitoba, particularly your families?
Well, my father was born in New York City, and as a very young little kid, his father got a job working in the fur industry in Winnipeg, so they moved here. My mother's father and wife were born in Russia. And I don't know how they got here. I think they were on the train from Halifax going west, and someone said Winnipeg, and the train stopped. He got off. And but my mother was born in Winnipeg.
Mm-hmm.
So in fact, Larry is a second generation Canadian.
Right.
That makes him superior to me, you see. I'm a first generation. My parents immigrated. My father immigrated from Russia at the very beginning in about 1920 on his own and had nothing except a name. And the name wasn't even his because in order to get out of Russia at the time, he had to buy someone else's passport. So he came with the name Malian, which is a Ukrainian name,
Mm-hmm.
not a Jewish name. And his birth name was Trachtenberg. So I really should have been a Trachtenberg.
Which is a
In
very
any case,
important name in American Jewish history.
yes, it is. And my mother came also from Chernovitz. She came alone at the age of 19. Imagine how courageous she was. Alone on a ship, came to Halifax, landed at Pier 21, the historic place of landing, and then took a train, came to join my father in Winnipeg. And the moment she arrived, they got married under a chuppah in her great aunt's yard, and they spent their wedding night in a rooming house.
Wow.
These are wonderful stories.
Yes, for Americans who
so
are not familiar with the history, Pier 21 in Halifax is the equivalent of Ellis Island for us here in the United States. I would say pretty about every Jew that came through Canada came through there and then spread back to Quebec, Ontario, and the prairies, they call them in Canada, because they could receive land with the promise of settling the land for a period of time. And that was a very, very exciting proposition for them. Not too many stayed on, in the land
no,
or anything,
no,
but
not at all.
they received those territories, and that became sort of the beginning of something. So,
It was the Baron Hirsch settlements on the
correct.
prairies. They were not very successful at all.
No,
And many of those families ended up in Winnipeg when their children were of age that they wanted them to have Jewish friends and a Jewish education.
correct.
I think what I would say about our parents, Larry's and mine, is that they were very much Canadian Jews, and my parents were very much European Jews. And so our upbringings were very, very different. And yet somehow we managed to find each other as teenagers in Winnipeg, and we've been together for, oh my goodness, we're almost 60 years married next year, and we've known each other for about 65.
That's incredible.
So yes,
That's
it really
nice.
is. And as I've said to everybody, they ask, how are we surviving? And I say, well, I haven't killed him yet.
That's how he survives, right?
He survived.
Larry, you mentioned that your father was in the fur industry. That's how we heard he ended up in that area. Did you take part of that venture as well?
Well, as a young man, we got married very early. I think it was 21 when I got married. I needed something to do, and my father said, well, come to the factory and you'll work. Well, I did go, and it wasn't very good idea at that time because I wasn't very happy. I had menial jobs to do. But I had met a very friendly banker, and he said, Larry, whatever you want, you just go buy it. So every month, maybe 3 times a month, I bought a residential property, and I accumulated quite a few. Then, as the years rolled by, the fur business that my father and grandfather were involved was really quite small. And I was very aggressive. Anyways, the sales manager quit just when it was time to go on the road, and it fell to me. Never sold anything in my life, never been on a road trip. Anyways, it was hugely successful. Was able to hire another salesman in Edmonton, who Jewish fellow was fantastic, and on and on and on. And I became very aggressive. Turned out we were able to sell our products we were the manufacturer. We had about 60 people in one factory and subcontractors in Montreal, Hong Kong, and China. I was able to do business in every province in Canada, and I would take a trip every year to see them all. From Newfoundland, all by the way, all the furs sold, garments sold in Newfoundland were ours. So
It's raining. Yes, carry
I
on.
we sold from coast to coast, went into Alaska, Japan. It was fantastic, and it gave me so much nachas to see my garment on the main streets of many of the big cities in Canada, and also in a catalog, a Christmas catalog. Then I moved to Germany and Switzerland and Norway through the help of the government that programs would fund you to go overseas and get going. So eventually, every German catalog, retail catalog, and Swiss catalog had my products. It was wonderful. It was so good. And then we moved to the States, and we were doing business with the company called Dayton Hudson, Lord and Taylor, and we became Bloomingdale's most successful fur vendor.
Wow.
And it was such a moving moment to see my product in a full page ad in the New York Times.
I'm sure.
And that went on for several years. But then my American friends did me a big favor. They sent me these letters called Chapter 11. Well, I didn't know what Chapter 1 was, and Chapter 11, I had no idea. But we all know what that was.
Of course.
So we met with the lawyers, accountant, bankers, and decided we better call it a day. Because instead of being a manufacturer, in fact, I was just a banker. So we paid all our debts, paid everyone off, and I had to refine myself and redevelop the property and carried on. And it was quite good, and it was fantastic, as a matter of fact.
Why did
And then I had,
why did all your
yes,
customers go under? Was it the push to protect the natural the fur against the use of animal skins?
no, what really happened, the price of the products got to be so high. Uh, the consumer said, no, I'm not going to buy it. Then there was too much product. And then, of course, the animal rights people didn't help the matters. So
Correct.
the industry, truthfully, it died.
Yeah.
So then I became very interested in civic matters. And I helped set up what we call in a downtown biz ambassadors. These are little fellows that walked around, younger kids walked around pseudo mounties to protect the people downtown and help them. Then I moved on to the JCC that we were building. And I convened a committee to see how big a place we're going to need, how many people we're going to have. We're coming from 650 people in the organization, and we figured best guess 1,000 family units. Turned out we had 2,500 family units, and it's turned out to be the most successful JCC in North America.
Wow.
Then I got other Jewish things. Then I got involved with the Combined Jewish Appeal in Winnipeg, helped fundraise for them, and then all of a sudden they plopped on me this redemption chairman. So for many, many years, even today, I'm responsible for making sure that the $6 million that's pledged annually gets delivered to the different agencies. It's a big, big responsibility. So that's really my story of, oh, and then I found a synagogue in Naples called Mayan. My father had passed away in 2004, and that evolved into this fantastic place called Beth Tikva. And we're so happy to be there so often and
Well,
partake.
we
And
are
then
happy.
also, there is no JCC in Naples, so they have what's called the MCA, Men's
Correct.
Culture Alliance. So I was one of the founding members, and also I run 3 or 4 programs for the men. It's very gratifying. We're
I
very
know.
happy to be
I
there.
know you love cars, and that
Love cars.
has translated into a program for them. And
Yes.
you've dealt with the sheriff department, and that too has translated into a program.
Yes. They're all my friends now. They're wonderful.
You know, Larry, they say that behind every successful man is an equally or more successful woman.
Hmm.
That is for
And
sure.
I met Evelyn for the first time during my interview process.
Mhm.
Interestingly enough, I was living in Ontario at the time, and that interview was also this way through Skype at the time.
Mhm.
So I know Evelyn before I know anybody else in Naples. Evelyn, what did you do while this guy was so busy running all this support,
Uh-huh.
this incredible enterprises?
I was basically a single mother at home with 3 children. He was away, I don't know, probably at least 3 months of the year, and very, very, very preoccupied with his career. And of course, we all benefited by his hard work. And I didn't complain very much, but he was not around all that much. And so it fell to me to be there for the kids. So I was basically an at home mom. And I got very involved in some extracurricular activities when I had the time. I was an entertainer. I did singing and dancing and professional theater, but I was only able to do that when he was around. So I do have very vivid memories of Larry walking in from the office at 6 o'clock, handing him a little baby with 2 other kids, saying they've been fed, bathe them, put them to bed, because I'm out for the evening at the Hollow Mug dancing and singing and enjoying my career at that time. And I did that for, I don't know, 20 years until I realized it was time to retire from that. I was getting too old. I had a lot of volunteer opportunities. I was involved in the community through the United Way. Um, Interestingly, we had a lotteries commission that gave away millions of dollars to community organizations, and I chaired that committee for a couple of years. And that was, I got to write a check for $1 million. That was really interesting. I've never been able to do that again. Um, and I got very involved at the synagogue when our older son came into bar mitzvah. So we were not regular synagogue goers at the beginning, although we kept a kosher home and mostly lived according to Jewish principles, I think, and our friends were mostly Jewish, and we celebrated all the holidays. But I started getting involved at the synagogue when Benji was bar mitzvahed, and from there it just went. I got involved and more involved and more involved, and eventually I became the first female president of the Sharet Zedek, which had 1,200 families at the time. It was a tooth and nail battle. I really had to work much harder than any of the men who were vice presidents. They gave me all the jobs to do first to prove myself.
Right.
But by hell, and I did it. And I was very, very pleased to be there. And I was the president at the time when we started becoming egalitarian. And my daughter had, I think, the second bat mitzvah in the synagogue on a Shabbat morning. We were able to carry the Torah. It was an extremely moving experience. And that whole experience of being in the shul just confirmed for me what I felt when I was very young, which was I'm Jewish in my core. And I probably will be until I die. So moving on to Naples. We found Naples very, very fortunately, and we've been going there for how many years now? Almost 20? Almost 20 years. We still don't own our own place. We've been renting, but we've really made a home for ourselves there. And we love the people, and we love coming to shul, and we love all of the programs that are available to us. We feel very alive when we're there and very stimulated. Unlike here at the lake where there's only the trees and the birds to talk to.
Well, sometimes that's what you need in life, right? The opposite in order to balance things out. But I also know that you had a very busy period in the interim I think it was the decade of the 90s, maybe even early 2000s. The
It was.
Argentinian economy tanked, and Winnipeg had an incredible experiment that they launched to entice and relocate some of these Argentinians in Canada. If I remember well, you had an integral part in that. Can you tell us a little bit?
I would love to. When you talk about the things that give one, when we look back on our lives, what are the things that we're the most proud of? I would say, other than my children, I would say that my work with the Argentinian immigrants to Winnipeg and building our community is one of the things I will be most proud of till I die. I was working at the Federation when Larry had to reinvent himself and our business and so on. I decided it was time for me to go to work. I was 50 years old when I became a full-time employee of the Federation. And I did public relations and community relations, and it was fascinating and interesting and also anxiety provoking because it was the time of the intifadas and I was getting phone calls in the morning and I had to be a spokesperson. And that's one of the reasons why when we first went to Naples, we said, it's great because there are no Jews here and nobody will ask me anything about anything. It didn't turn out that way, but that was one of the motivations. And then the government of Manitoba was lobbying the federal government to start allowing the individual provinces to choose the immigrants. We all knew that Manitoba was ready, Canada was ready to receive many immigrants, and Manitoba especially, because most people only knew about Ontario and Quebec
Correct.
in the embassies overseas and in other places. So we were asked by the Manitoba government if we would participate in a pilot project to not only create a program for immigrants, but to work on attracting them. And we got a lead about the community in Buenos Aires by one of its inhabitants who came and told the premier of our province that there was a Jewish community in Buenos Aires that was looking, that would want to move at some point. Would we be interested? So we started sending delegations very, very slowly at the beginning because it was just a program that was opening up. And then, of course, the 1998, we started receiving a few people who came because they could no longer abide by the tyranny and the uncertainty and the corruption in Buenos Aires. And they confirmed for us that there was a community there ripe for us to welcome. And then the Corralita happened, the financial catastrophe where so many of the middle class lost so much of what they had. And we went with Manitoba government representatives to interview them. I went 3 times, I think, to interview people. We had very strict guidelines. Many of them, unfortunately, were not able to meet our guidelines, but enough of them did. And in about 2000, they started coming, and for 4 years, they came. We welcomed them. We had them come early on exploratory visits so that it wouldn't be completely a cultural shock for them when
Correct.
they came. We introduced them to community members. It was a community effort. We had so much assistance from the ordinary people in our community who welcomed them, hosted them, drove them, helped them connect with jobs. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I would say, all in all, we probably enriched our community by about 4,000 people. Now, we're a small community of about 15,000 people, and
You
we
should
keep
know that
losing.
that's 3 times more people than in Colombia, where I grew up.
Really?
Yes,
Ah, yes. Well, in
but
any case,
but for American standards, it is very small.
we I I guess what I say most is that it was a shidduch made in heaven. They were anxious to identify as Jews. They wanted to be part of a kehillah. They weren't necessarily observant, which fit in perfectly with our community because essentially we don't have a very, very observant community in Winnipeg. Our community roots go back to the Bund and the labor Zionists
Correct.
And so we're not an extremely observant community, although there is that element in the community. In any case, they came, they found jobs, they learned English, they bought homes. They've been a very, very successful group of hardworking people who came with a fire in their bellies. They knew that they had to make a go of it. There was no other way. Their children have all been educated. Some of them have married and had children already. And I see them all as my family. And when
Right.
I hear from them, I don't see them all now, but when I hear from them, I I get all verklempt because it's been such a wonderful experience for us all.
Yeah, it's very
And there were others that came, Rabbi. There were Israelis that came. These were Israelis who were desperate to leave Israel. And it was not an easy decision for our community. There were big debates about this. How do we as a community who collect money for Israel encourage emigration, encourage them to become Yordim
correct.
instead of Olim? So ultimately, and there were big articles in the Jerusalem Post about it, and I was interviewed. And ultimately, the decision by our board was that these are free agents. If they wish to leave Israel, we will not go out of our way to entice them, but if they contact us, we will welcome them. And so we've had, I don't know, maybe 2,000 or more have come. And also a very positive experience. Many of them had to leave Israel because both partners were not Jewish, especially if they came from the Ukraine or Russia, where the patriarchy system was in place. So many of the women were not Jewish, and then their children weren't. And in Israel, it was a whole balagan about getting recognized. And they've been very grateful. And I'll tell you, if you go to a Yom HaAtzmaut celebration at our JCC, it is full of these Israelis who come to celebrate their culture, even though they're now part of Canada.
Correct.
We've had, I can't tell you how many citizenship courts I've attended to welcome all of them as landed as Canadians, basically.
Right.
And
were all the Argentinians Jewish?
yes.
Was that a requirement for the program?
Yes. We didn't ask to see their
bris,
their birth certificates, but yes, when they came, we questioned them, and for I would say they were Jewish, which was very interesting. If I can tell you a funny story, when the Israelis started to come, they posted. By then, that we're talking now 2003, 4, 5. The internet was, of course, very strong, and people were using it as references and finding out about Winnipeg and all about Winnipeg and who and what would happen to them. In fact, there were web pages that posted the questions that Evelyn Hecht will ask you when you go on your exploratory visit, and this is how you should answer. Yeah, that was cute. But I never had that issue with the Argentinians. I really felt they were very sincere and very grateful for the opportunity to have a Jewish life.
Yeah. So, have most of them remained Jews?
Yes. Most, I would say, I don't have exact statistics, but I would say probably about 80% of them joined the synagogues. They had bar and bat mitzvahs for their children. Whether they've maintained their memberships, I can't speak to that. Right. But certainly they've become involved in our federation, in all aspects of it. Once they got themselves established, I mean, it couldn't happen overnight. Yes. But once they were established, they absolutely were able to give back.
Wonderful. Very nice stories. Yeah. I know your children are also very accomplished, but I've been very careful not to make these interviews about the children.
Our children.
We all have Jewish naches. We all share naches from our kids.
Absolutely.
If you had to inspire us and leave us with a good thought before we close our interview, what would that be? Remember, we're in a world today that has the coronavirus. We have the Black
Black
Matter.
Lives Matter.
Yeah. As of today, we learned that Jews are the target of great opposition, discrimination in France, and we don't know what's going to happen there. So it's a very dynamic, changing world, and you have a lot of experience. What would you have to say to somebody who's despairing in this situation, who's having a hard time seeing beyond the day?
Well, the truth is, we've never really known what lies in the future for us. We've always had limited visibility, even though we may have been foolish enough to think we didn't. And I think that's what this particular time has been for us. It's been a realization that we are all vulnerable and we are all at risk, and we don't know what tomorrow will bring. And it's one of the most difficult things for people, especially our age, who know that we're reaching the last 9 holes as opposed to the first.
Right.
And Larry and I don't golf, so that's not a very funny reference for me to make. But we wish we could know what the future will bring for our last years, and we don't.
Yeah, but
So
you
I
have
think
you have a stake in the future with your children and grandchildren. And of course, those of us who are coming right behind you, stepping on your heels. You're right. This is probably the first time in 2 or 3 generations of Jewish American experience, and by that I include Canada, of course, where we feel a little uncomfortable, where our optics, our perspectives are so limited. Nobody can make plans for tomorrow. I'm trying to make plans to see my grandchildren, and I can't, because you can't do that. And sometimes it's very hard, probably harder than anything else.
I agree, Rabbi.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult. I think for those of us who have faith, who believe in that things are bashert, or
Right.
that God is in some way can be beneficent and just in this world. I mean, we've read about it. We know there are times when in our history when that has not been true. If we can hold on to that, I think it helps. For many of us who can't quite see it that way, who can't make that leap of faith, I think we have to just trust ourselves. I think
Right.
we have to believe in our own capacity to overcome whatever comes our way, plan for what you can, and be strong to face what we have never faced before.
Right. Well, I want to remind.
My heart is breaking. Well, not breaking, but my heart is aching because our 2 youngest grandchildren, we have many grown-up grandchildren, but the 2 youngest are 6, almost 6, and 16 months. And we haven't seen them since last October, and they live in another province, and I don't know if they'll be able to come to visit us this summer. I don't know when I'll see them again.
Yeah.
And that's heartbreaking. It's
Yeah,
heartbreaking because I'll never get to know them. It seems like I may never get to know them the way I knew the ones that grew up around the corner from us.
Correct.
However, they're well, our children are well, we are well right now, and we have to be grateful for that. And I know when I say I'm grateful, it sounds, forgive me for saying this, it sounds very Christian. But to be grateful, when you're grateful for the things that you do have, it pushes out a lot of the sorrow and a lot of the resentment and a lot of the anger and a lot of the angst. And so I think we have to do that every single day, like Larry does when he puts his tefillin on every day.
It's a very Jewish thing. The first word that comes out of our mouths every morning is modeh ani. I am grateful. I am acknowledging the fact that every breath I take is a gift, and that puts away a lot of nonsense. This week we read in the Torah the story of the spies of the 12, only 2 had the right inclination, and they persevered, and the people survived. I think that that's where we need to hold on to, that even if it's only out of 12, 2, less than 20% hope, because it'll carry the day. And we've gone through worse in our lives. And perhaps the formula is precisely what you say, to be grateful. Somebody told me that there is no past, it's gone. The future, well, these days we cannot predict. So the present is truly that, a gift, a present. So we have to be grateful for the present that we have every day. And today I want to thank you for the present of your time, of your wisdom and experience. You serve as an incredible example for all of us to live the best lives we can, and wholesome lives that are about giving and sowing the fruits of our investment. And I don't mean that only in the financial world, but like you said, you now have a bunch of Argentinian children that all owe it to you, the ability to have left Argentina and made a better life for themselves. I want to leave you with our blessings. I hope that you are not too sequestered in your cabin. Everybody should have a golden cage like that, right? We should all be so lucky. I wish you all the best for the summer. I hope your kids come to see you. Mine haven't been here since Pesach of a year ago, so I know exactly how you feel. I wish you well. Any last words?
Keep doing what you're doing, Rabbi.
You're very kind. We will try our very best. A
And
kiss to both of you.
I hope we'll be able to join our wonderful friends in Naples in 2021.
I'm sure you will. We're talking that for the next 90 days it'll be hard, but by the time the season rolls over, we'll probably be in a much better shape, because we'll be able to foretell and anticipate things that we cannot do right now. So I wish you well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you in class tomorrow.
We'll be there. Bye.
Bye.